listen up. Listen up. Everyone's thinking it. I'm going to say it. If we weren't smack dab in the middle of a very publicized and high-profile gas station recruiting war on this show, would the Big 12, or any other conference for that matter, even have the audacity to go out there and shop their own naming rights? And the answer is no. But it's happening. Late Kick is live, high atop a jam-packed and vibrant downtown Nashville, Tennessee. It's Thursday, June 13th, the year of our Lord 2024. That means in a mere 36 or so hours, I will be firing off the Saturday morning cornfield tweet that we are 11 Saturdays away from kickoff, and that doesn't count week 0, for those of you who always ask. You guys, not you, the listener or the viewer, but you guys in the college football administrative ecosphere, you let Brett Yormark off the hook. I told you not to. I dropped Easter eggs all over the show that they were up to something out there, and now you found out what. So I'm going to talk about it. Yes, if you've been at work today, if you've been living your life, you may not be aware that there's like a seismic sort of ground shift out there in the heartland. America's conference is making moves, a.k.a. the Big 12. I've got some college football playoff stuff with the SEC to talk about. I asked you guys earlier today, how many teams is the SEC going to get in this thing? 3, 4, 5, 8, some of you think. 2, 3, we'll see. I think there is a big fork in the road. And we're going to go divergent paths here based on how the SEC is handled in the college football playoff this year. Of course, we've got bold predictions on the show tonight. Of course, we've got huge questions on the show tonight. I'm going to do the Colorado mood tracker for the fan base. I'm going to go very deep inside my own personal heart and soul on how I feel about conference championship games and whether they're still needed. And you know I don't do these kinds of segments lightly. So are they still needed? And the conundrum, you also know how rarely I use that word, that we could have on our hands this very year, guys. In a few months, we could have a great big mess, an ethical dilemma of sorts on our hands. So we got a jam-packed show tonight. They're watching us in Box Springs, Georgia, Pioneer, Ohio, Richmond, Virginia, Santa Cruz, California, which is just up the coast a few hours from Los Angeles, where we will be next week, which I don't think I've announced. Yeah, we're going to do the show live from L.A. next week, Tuesday. Someone tell USC we'll be in town. You guys want to hook up for lunch? We'll be in town. But yeah, we'll be at Elite 11, and I'll talk more about that Sunday night. I don't have time to talk about that tonight because we got a jam-packed show tonight. So here we go. The Big 12 is all over the news. I woke up this morning and hadn't even put my contact lens in and just glanced at the eye, Josh, and there it is. Uncle Dennis, breaking news. The Big 12 considering private equity investment in exchange for 20% share of the league? Well, whomst amongst us could have seen this coming? Also, several others throughout the day, the Dellingers, the Thamels of the world, etc., they ended up breaking the news that not only was that happening, but guess what else the Big 12 is doing? The Big 12 also having the audacity to shop naming rights. So it may not just be the Big 12 anymore. It could be the fill-in-the-blank Big 12, or it could be the fill-in-the-blank conference, period, because they haven't had 12 teams in that thing since like 2011 anyway, so is the number really all that important? What do I tell you guys from time to time? I speak in coded language, and I admit that, and I tell you what I can when I can. But I tell you, you're not wasting your time watching the show. Okay, so sometimes I have to do it in the form of Easter eggs because the trade-off for people trusting you with information is they tell you, shut up and don't tell anyone this. And it sucks because I wish I could just tell you everything we hear behind the scenes. But one of you, actually like 50 of you, picked up on this today. When this news broke, you said, hold on, wait a second. This sounds like something I heard, I don't know, over the past 6 months. Roll it, Colin. Let me give you one piece of advice, though. There's a little shark fin just offshore, and it's Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12. And just a little word to the wise out there. I don't know how wise the folks are we're talking to, but just a little word to the wise. Don't let that guy get any traction. Don't let Brett Yormark find his footing. You better keep your foot on their neck. Now, I am rooting for the alternative. I am rooting for the Big 12 to continue to, against all odds, continue to rise. They shouldn't even be alive right now. I think it would be very, very penny wise, pound foolish to let that guy, who truth be told, on equal footing, could probably run circles around all of you, it would be very, very penny wise, pound foolish to let him get his feet and his conference get its feet under it. They are finding their footing, friends. They're finding their footing by the day. Now, here's how this is supposed to work. The SEC and the Big 10 are supposed to be behemoths, and the rest of you are just supposed to fade into the abyss. That's what you're supposed to do. Some have acquiesced. Example, where is the Pac-12 tonight? Does anyone see the Pac-12 tonight? No, you can find the Pac-12 on the back of a milk carton at the grocery store. The Big 12 has chosen a different tact because they found someone who has existed in this world long before he actually came into this world. Brett Yormark has executed 7, 8, 9-figure deals in other walks of life long before he ever got here. Now, there are several ways to think about this, and I know 98% of you just want to watch the games on Saturday, so I always view it through that lens. How does this impact you? Well, a lot of people heard these reports today, okay? Keep in mind, you got two of them. One of them, private equity. There's a knock on the door. Private equity could be coming into the Big 12. And then there's the Big 12 could sell their naming rights to Allstate and be called the Allstate Big 12 Conference. Well, it's all the same, Josh. It's not. It's not close to the same thing. Now, it is true enough that this is all about the revenue gap. And if you just started watching college football like 30 seconds ago and this is all confusing, let me simplify it for you. The SEC and the Big 10 got a whole lot of money. The Big 12 does not. In fact, the rest of the conferences in college football do not. The SEC and the Big 10 make all that money because they've got 9/10 of the most valuable properties in the sport that most people want to watch, and they're all wearing SEC or Big 10 stickers on the back of their helmets, and the rest is very, very sparse out there. There are people like us, frankly, a lot of folks who watch this show, who love the sport. We love college football. So we'll be dialed into Kansas State versus Iowa State. But the more casual crowd out there, and yes, you have to tailor your marketing strategy to them, they're not as attracted to Oklahoma State versus Texas Tech as they would be Penn State versus Ohio State or Ole Miss versus Alabama. We all understand that. So what do? Well, you can, like I said, do what the Pac-12 did and fumble your way into irrelevance and eventual extinction, or you can get creative and you can innovate. You can think outside the box and you can define what Big 12 strategy is. And Big 12 strategy, if it's going to succeed, has to look way different. So two different things going on here. They are not the same thing. One of them is as simple as selling basically the right to put a sticker on the side of your conference. And if Allstate wants to pony up the money, if State Farm wants to pony up the money, if Pop-Tarts wants to pony up the money, go for it. But that's the long and short of that. That private equity game is a little bit different ball game. Now, there are admittedly a lot of people who watch this show. I know because I converse with you behind the scenes who know a lot more about that world than I do. I have dipped my toe in it because I own this brand. And so this brand has skyrocketed in value. Now, it's not the Big 12. It's not a college football conference, but I've had conversations about that. So I know like a little sliver of an inkling about it, but I don't know it to the degree Brett Yormark does. Now, there are other people who, in other walks of life, are very familiar with this. And they know, for example, if you're reading headlines from one Dennis Dodd that suggests the Big 12 is exploring a massive private equity infusion of cash, which is just what this is. It's an infusion of cash in exchange for a 20% stake, a fifth stake in your conference. Here's how my mind works. My mind says, okay, well, that's great. You get cash in the short term, but in the long term, don't you own 20% less of all the revenue that's going to come your way? The answer is obviously yes. So then the follow-up in my mind is, okay, with that cash infusion, do you have it within your power to increase the value of your product enough to where you overcome only making 80% of your revenue because it would have been 100%? So in other words, are you making up the ground above and beyond what it's costing you to take that cash infusion? I think they've got a plan. I don't know what it is. I think it's very, very important to note right now, we don't know the full scope of this. Brett Yormark's not an idiot. That's what I do know. So Brett Yormark has forgotten things about this thing that not only we don't know, we aren't even privy to yet. So I'm in the wait-and-see approach on that. But it should be noted, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has weighed in. Quote, there are cautionary tales about private equity out there. I've had half a dozen or more meetings with representatives, all good people, all learning opportunities. but I think people have to exercise a level of care before just jumping in. It was unclear as to whether that strategy is supposed to exist when it comes to conference realignment. Seems the SEC jumped pretty quick at Texas and Oklahoma. But I digress. Here's the thing. Like I said at the beginning, the Big 12 is not going to sit back and just accept their role. It's very easy to say that from the top of the mountain, by the way. No disrespect to Greg Sankey, but it's very easy to say that from the top of the mountain. They don't have many other options in the Big 12 because of their mentality. See, if their mentality was to just accept irrelevance, accept B-tier status, second-class citizenship, it'd be okay. They can just take the scraps. They're not really interested in that. They're interested, believe it or not, in the Big 12 in remaining viable as one of the power conferences in college football. And you know what? I'm not crazy about private equity coming into this sport at all, but I almost have to separate that and say, good on you for trying. Good on you for not just basically bending a knee to the Big Ten or bending the knee to the SEC and saying, yes, sir, what can we have? Like, what will you let us be? Forget about what they'll let you be. Go be whoever you can be. U.S. Army. So I get where the Big 12's head's at. I despise, at a cellular level, that college athletics has come to this. Once again, not the naming rights thing. The naming rights thing is small potatoes compared to what the private equity thing is. So the private equity thing is boring to talk about, and I'm not going to spend any more time on that. But I do want to just touch on this whole naming rights thing, because that's what garnered a majority of your attention today when you saw this headline. Because when you saw this headline, you didn't care about minority equity stakes. You didn't care about return on investment. That's what parents talk about, not us. Many of you are. But nevertheless, we don't like talking about that stuff. It's boring. What do we like talking about? Well, we like talking about naming rights. Who's going to buy the naming rights? And as you know, okay, we can't have nice things around here. We could have had Whataburger come in and name it the Whata Conference. Nope, not going to happen. We could have had Pop-Tart come in and just name them the Pop 12. Nope, can't have that. What do we get? All-State. That's the leading candidate apparently in the clubhouse, All-State. I got nothing against All-State, but if you guys seriously go and try and make that thing the All-State 12 or the All-State Conference, and this is not me speculating, this is being reported from multiple reputable sources that's the leader in the clubhouse, I will switch to State Farm out of spite. You're not getting that out of me. I still call X Twitter. So if I'm still calling X Twitter, you better believe I'm calling the Big 12 over some random sanitized corporate name that is not fun. There's nothing fun about All-State. All-State would be smart to buy the naming rights and then have some fun with the rights that they've purchased. Having said that, I'm not running marketing. I'm not consulting for All-State, although I think it would be a half-decent investment on their part, but I'm not running a consulting firm right quick. But I did want to show you what Landon came up with, because there was some good stuff floating around the internet today. Landon just ats the Big 12 Conference. Hear me out. He brings Southwest into the equation. Southwest Airlines, not exactly flush in cash at the moment from what I understand, but in an alternate universe, you bring Southwest Airlines in, and you just rename that thing the Southwest Conference. As I said when I saw that, you guys might as well pack it in. No one will do better than Landon today. The Southwest Conference. That's what we need. All due respect, we don't need the All-State 12. Give me the Southwest Conference. Give me the Pop-Tart 12. Can we please, for once in our lives, have some fun with the greatest sport in the world? Can we please do that? Welcome aboard. Happy to have you guys here. It is a Thursday night as I speak to you live. I know that I kind of hinted at the idea that we may have had a Tuesday show because I was going to go storm chasing. And then I said, no, we're going to do a Thursday show, but I'm still going storm chasing. I woke up Wednesday morning. We were all set to fly to Minneapolis, and I didn't like the profile. I just didn't like the setup. So we abandoned the chase. Forgive me, Reed Timmer, who ended up intercepting a tornado a little north of Minneapolis. I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling it. So there will be other days. June looks to be incredibly active over the upper plains. So storm chasing season not over, but that's why there was a precious lack of storm chasing content in the Instagram story. which half of you are following on Instagram now for @LateKickJosh. But don't worry, it's not over. It's not over. Air conditioning in our studio is over for tonight, but that is not over. Half my notes fell off the table. That's fine. I don't need them. That's not a message for you, Jesse. I really don't need them. So I've got a little ethical dilemma. I'm probably going to need your help with it, to be honest. So let's just dive into this. I've got ongoing debates with several friends on a couple of different issues with conference championship games. So let me just pitch it to you. Like, where's your mind on conference championship games right now? I don't need you guys, if you're watching live, to look in the live chat. I want you to think for yourself. Everyone think for yourself before you look at the comments. Where's your head on conference championship games? I've always loved them. I grew up, I grew up in the 2000s, 90s, 2000s. So they were around. I think the SEC started theirs in 92. The concept of a conference championship game, in other words, has always been around in my lifetime. Some of you are a little more seasoned, and you remember a time long before conference championship games existed. The Big 12s, or the Big 10s rather, isn't even 15 years old. So two things. Here's where my conundrum is. Two things. Number one, this year, are we going to have rivalry game rematches in conference championship games? There are 5 opportunities for that to happen, by the way. 3 rivalry rematch opportunities. Think about this. Michigan-Ohio State is played the last Saturday of the year. They could play that thing again 6 days later. Auburn and Alabama, less likely, but still, point remains. They play that game the last week of the year. That could turn around and be played in the SEC championship game. Texas at Texas A&M is played and could be played again 1 week later in the conference championship game. Now, why is this all of a sudden an issue now, whereas it used to not be? Well, first off, Texas and Texas A&M hadn't even been in the same conference until this year. Auburn, Alabama, and Michigan, Ohio State were in the same divisions for a long time, so it was impossible for the rematch to happen. We are doing away with divisions in both conferences starting this year, but we're not changing the schedule, so therefore we have a potential issue on our hands. But here's the thing. Some of you don't think it's an issue, I've found out. Now, many more of you agree with me than I thought would agree with me, so I take some comfort in that. But here's what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, firstly, Michigan, Ohio State, let's say they play. It is the greatest rivalry in college football. Some say the greatest rivalry in sports. I've been at the last 3 games. It is an unbelievable environment, and I wasn't born into the rivalry. So I just observe it from afar. What if they play that, and it has all the urgency and all the buildup and all the drama and the hype and the over-the-cliff, face in the fan, zero margin for error, aura about it? But what if we get that this year and we already know they're going to play the game again 6 days later? There are 2 schools of thought on this, and I cannot buy into the other one. The first school of thought is you can't possibly have that situation and maintain maximum urgency on the original game. You can't. You absolutely cannot. That's my school of thought. The other school of thought is more of a good thing is a good thing. Well, if it's awesome 1 week, it'll be awesome if they play it again a week later. But it won't be as awesome. There's no logical way for you to convince me that if I'm watching Michigan, Ohio State, and the entire week leading up to it, I know they're going to play again no matter what, 7 days later, 6 days later, that it feels the same. There's no possible way. The most traditional purist in the world, in other words, me, couldn't even say, oh, don't worry, it won't lose its relevance. So that's the first issue that we could potentially have. The second issue I have baked into that first issue is I don't care that the following week would have a conference championship on the line. I don't care that the following week would have a first-round bye and the playoff on the line. I don't care that playoff implications are riding more on the second game than the original, because the original means more to me. This is where I think some are just going to disagree with me, but let me tell you where I come from. I come from a place, in my mind, where the regular season of college football is it for me, and everything else is just kind of cherry on top. It is what it is, but it's the regular season for me. There's nothing like it in sports. And within the regular season, we have rivalries. And within that small cluster of rivalries, we have certain ones like Ohio State and Michigan that are second to none. And they've played that thing for over a century. Without fail, it delivers. The hype is unmatched. The urgency, the intensity, just the pure, unadulterated hatred is unmatched. I grew up in the South. I didn't know it because I wasn't immersed in it. I watched it from a distance, but I've witnessed it. 3 years in a row, I've witnessed that. Some would say maybe I'm a good luck charm for Michigan. I don't want to suggest that. Too many friends in Columbus. Don't want to suggest that. But here's what I will suggest. I don't care if the following week it's a conference championship game in some sterilized NFL venue. Ohio State versus Michigan, the rivalry game, is institutionalized in my mind. It always has been. It was as if it was created on the seventh day instead of rest. That's what that game means to me. That's what that game means to a college football purist. The Big 10 championship the following week, it's man-made. Like it's got an artificial feel in my mind compared to what the game feels like to me. And it's a cash grab, and those conference championship games always have been. And in the expanded playoff era, I'm not even sure where they fit anymore, but yet they'll try to sell me on that game being played 7 days later having more significance than the game itself. You will never sell me on that. You simply cannot. And so I may differ with some of you. I had someone going back and forth with me today, and they said, Ohio State versus Michigan, the regular season game, is just for those fan bases. But Ohio State versus Michigan in the Big Ten championship game with playoff implications on the line, that impacts the whole country. The whole country's already impacted by that game. You don't have to have direct rooting interest. You don't have to have grown up in like Sault Ste. Marie or Akron. You don't have to be from these places. You don't have to be of those fan bases. If you say that, I just don't think you have a firm grasp on what rivalry college football is all about. So that's the first problem. Here's the second potential problem. Could it be advantageous to not make your conference championship game? Just take Ole Miss, for example. You could pick any of a number of teams from a couple of power conferences, but could it be advantageous to kind of secretly want to miss out on your conference championship game? Let's say Ole Miss is 10-2. They just miss out on going to Atlanta. They don't play for the SEC championship, but they're 10-2. They know they're in the playoff. They're going to be a really high seed. They don't have to go and potentially lose in the conference championship game. They're 10-2. They're a very, very highly ranked SEC team. They end up locking down the 5 seed, which means in their first round game, they play in Oxford. They play a home playoff game against the 12 seed, which is most likely the G5 team. And then they win that game, and you know who their next opponent would be in the bracket? It would likely be the lowest ranked conference champ. Now, that conference champ has a bye in the first round, but that conference champ also may be from the Big 12. Also may be a touchdown plus underdog to Ole Miss, even though Ole Miss is not rested and you are. And so Lane Kiffin or Ole Miss or any of a number of teams you could insert here could look and say, wait, would we rather risk going to Atlanta and losing to Georgia and still having to play in the first round, or would we rather just accept the 5 seed, get rested up, and go into the playoff with a very favorable draw? Given that we don't have any stated protocols that prevent that, yeah, that's a very real possibility, which again begs the question. If Ole Miss sits there 10-2, doesn't go to Atlanta, locks down the 5 seed and a favorable draw, they have been in a better position than, say, Texas, who does go and play Georgia and lose to Georgia and have to play in the first round as a lower seed with a worse draw. Where's the incentive? The incentive, of course, is, well, Josh, they could have won the game and they could have gotten a first round bye. Yeah, but here's the follow-up logic there. What sense does it make to force your 2 best teams to go play a game that exists for cash? Just be real about it. It exists so you can line your pockets further. And you've baked in this whole first round bye possibility, but you're telling me the losing team is worse off for playing there? So, to my knowledge, the committee has not come out and stated any protocol that's like a fail-safe against this. And what I mean by that is, if they came out tomorrow and they said there will be no instance where a team from a conference loses their conference title game and drops below another team in that conference that didn't play in the conference championship game. Hey, if they come out and say that, then it makes a little more sense. But they haven't said that. Have they? Jesse, I have not heard a single word like that. So I keep coming back to this question in my mind that I rarely do. I rarely do this kind of stuff because it sounds really hot take-ish, and we don't do that on this show. This is not a hot take. It's just a genuine question. Is there still a place for conference championship games in college football? Now, here's what I didn't say. What I didn't say is, will they get rid of them? Oh, they won't get rid of them. They make too much money. So let me ask it a different way. Because nobody involved in this show, nobody listening to or watching this show actually makes any of that money. So that doesn't impact us. So let me ask you like this. If I removed the payday, would any of these conferences still play these games? The answer is a hard no. So it's very obvious we're not playing it for the integrity of the game, for the betterment of the sport, to better or further the product. We're playing the game so a few people can make a lot of money. Even having said that, are you going to build in parameters that make those games still make sense? Are the games still going to feel as significant? I have no idea. Because like you, I'm experiencing the expanded playoff era for the first time. But I'm very interested, that scenario I just painted, the Ole Miss Texas scenario, for example, that benefits Ole Miss. It benefited Ole Miss to not go to Atlanta and let Texas go there and lose. Like, Ole Miss ended up better because of that. There is no logic where that makes sense, or there's no logic in that making sense. It doesn't, but right now it could happen. So we'll see how that works out. I do know that come what may in the college football playoff, Father's Day is going to happen this Sunday. Jesse, we've confirmed that. And we didn't need Dennis Dodd to do it. Dennis was probably aware, but he did not even break that news. We are breaking that news. Father's Day is this Sunday. And Academy Sports and Outdoors follow-up has you covered. There you go. It could be academy.com. It could be a good old-fashioned in-store visit. But whatever you're thinking about doing for Father's Day, you could go the card route. You could go the nondescript gift card route. We've all done it. Whomst amongst us hasn't. But here's what else you could do. You could just go hook him up with a grill from Academy. You go hook him up with a bike. You go hook him up, if he's an outdoors type, fishing gear, tent. Notice I haven't even gotten into the old school sporting goods. You could just buy him a basketball goal. You could do that. You could buy him a new football, commemorative or otherwise. You could do all these things. I'm just trying to remind you that while, yes, Academy Sports and Outdoors carries the classics, they also carry a whole lot of other stuff that you probably thought you had to go elsewhere to buy. Celebrate, Dad. Do it at Academy. That's the tagline for this week. They did not pay to license that, so I'm just freely stating it. Celebrate, Dad. Do it at Academy. Academy Sports and Outdoors, your exclusive outdoor sporting goods plus provider. Thank you guys so much for being a long-time partner on the show. We've got big questions, as you've already seen and heard. We've had several tonight. And if you're listening on podcast, I don't know if you can hear this, the wind occasionally blowing in the mic, but I'm just telling you it's hot in here. And so I am soldiering on, as few others would. It could be darn near 75 degrees in here, starting to feel it a little bit, A lesser man would have folded by now, but I'm going to press on. I may get Jesse to spray me in the face a little bit later on, but I press on. Biggest questions in the sport this year. You've got several, I've got several. Here are 4 that I wanted to present you tonight. Which of these first-year coaches is going to have the biggest impact? We could look at Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. We could look at Sharon Moore at Michigan. Those are the first 2 I go to, only because I feel like they're in the same boat. The question with them is not, can they win or can they build a program? They don't need to. The program's already built. That's the benefit of taking over at Michigan after they won a national title, or at Alabama after the greatest of all time had it on cruise control in the championship picture every year. So the question with both of them is basically, will the DNA, will the identity of the program feel similar to what it felt like under Jim Harbaugh or Nick Saban, respectively? And that's a great unknown. I've got fair amounts of I got extreme confidence in DeBoer because we've seen him do it before. I think you guys should go listen to Sharon Moore sit down with Joel Klatt. It's about 30 or 40 minutes, kind of in the same vein of what we've been doing on the road with a lot of these head coaches. Because I don't think a lot of people have heard Sharon Moore talk for an extended period of time. Michigan folks have. I don't think the country has. And you'd be well served to go listen to that. So talking is one thing, of course. Executing it is an entirely another thing. But those two are kind of in the same boat. Mike Elko at Texas A&M, I also have a lot of curiosity about, but Elko's different. Whereas Sharon Moore and Kalen DeBoer are trying to maintain the elite identity, try and maintain the facade and maybe the veneer of what has already been a winner. Elko's trying to create what should have already been there. Jimbo at Texas A&M had everything at his disposal, and Texas A&M was never a powerhouse. They were never an elite program at any time under him. Should have been, but weren't. Can be, will they be under Mike Elko? And you don't have to wait 2 or 3 years. You can absolutely see signs of that in year one under him. Now, I'm trying to be hesitant because you've got to love everything you're hearing and feeling from College Station right now. I'm trying to be hesitant because they're 0-0 since he's become the head coach. It can be very tempting, just like DeBoer at Alabama, same way. There's been a lot of positive recruiting momentum there. A lot more probably than some people expected. Kalen DeBoer is 0-0 at Alabama. Mike Elko is 0-0 at Texas A&M. And I'm trying to hit the brakes on both of them right now, but it's noticeable. One dark horse candidate in this whole conversation is at Arizona with Brent Brennan. Kind of anonymous, I think, on the national landscape. He was 34-48 at San Jose State. So you may think to yourself, why would I get excited about that guy? Well, number one, you can't just do the whole you are what your record says you are thing. Yeah, if he's 34-48 at Florida, get rid of him. It was San Jose State. Also, 3 of his last 4 years, they were a winner. So it's obvious things were on the upswing there. And when he came to Arizona, he's not inheriting a completely stripped-down roster. In fact, Jed Fish inherited a stripped-down, not a stripped-down roster at Washington. I don't want to paint it like that. A lot of the known pieces are not at Washington anymore. Washington's a very capable program, and they got capable players up there. You don't know the names of them quite yet. But at Arizona, the fear obviously was all those guys are going to leave. Quarterback and star wide receiver chief among them, and they did not. So Arizona could be a surprise contender this year. The Friday night game at Kansas State early in the year. Watch out for that. Another question here. Let's go. We already mentioned them one time in the show. How about this? Good for the Rebs. Can Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss get over the hump? And here's a follow-up question. What is the hump at Ole Miss? What, are we talking about winning a championship? Are we talking about winning the SEC? Is it just making the playoff? What if I told you, this is worth a paper pop, what if I told you that Ole Miss is coming off their most successful season in program history? Does that occur to any of you? Is that kind of a surprise to hear? They've never won 11 games before. They just won 11 last year. They've won 29 over the past 3 years. That's one of the best programs in the country. That is flying high by pretty much any standard, but it is soaring above like commercial cruising altitude by Ole Miss standards. But yet, I think it's a consensus, even amongst Ole Miss fans, that they haven't gotten over the hump yet. This just goes to show you the standards in this sport, especially in the conference they play in, are sky high. So again, I ask, in the 12-team playoff era, with Jackson Dart coming back, a loaded receiver room, they killed it in the portal yet again, what's the hump? And what would be considered them getting over it? They need to go to the SEC title game? They need to win it? If they don't win it, do they need to make the playoff? If they make it in as like a 7 seed, do they need to win at least one game? That's where it is for me. For me, it's Ole Miss, make the playoff and win a game in the playoff. That would feel like doing something above and beyond what they've already done. Now, I know that you could look at it and say, no, if they make the playoff, they're doing something they've never done. 2 of their last 3 finishes would have been good enough to make a 12-team playoff field. So just if they make it in this year does not mean they're all of a sudden doing something that they hadn't done. They're not playing at any different level, in other words, than they had already been playing at. It's just we lowered the bar in this sport as to what it takes to make a playoff. So what is the hump for Ole Miss? And will they get over it? Thirdly, boy, these questions are so fun because they don't have to come with predictions. They could just be questions. is there a disruptor in the Big Ten this year? Is there a team basically not named Ohio State or Michigan that's going to win this thing? I have to consider everyone else a disruptor. The last time someone other than Ohio State or Michigan won the Big Ten was 2016. It's been 8 years since someone other than the team in Columbus and the team in Ann Arbor won this conference, which is a little ridiculous. If we're being real, you want to shake the moniker of being a top-heavy conference. How about mixing it up? How about a little more variety on the trophy stand in Indianapolis than Ohio State, Michigan every single time? Penn State did it in 2016. None of them have done it since then, which means anyone other than Ohio State and Michigan winning this thing would be a disruptor. Oregon winning the conference, I think that would be a disruptor, even though they're the second best odds team to win the conference. The reason is it's so easy for FanDuel to make that list in June. I got nothing against it, by the way. I agree with the odds, but here's the thing. It's one thing to say Oregon is the second odds-on favorite to win the conference. It's a whole different thing for them to go do it. And for us to, turn on that Big Ten championship game and to see yellow and green confetti raining down in their first year in the conference. How does that sit? That's disruption. Walking into one of the premier conferences in college football and winning it year one. You know good and well what it takes to win that conference. In other words, being better than Ohio State and Michigan means you had to be as physical as them in all likelihood. You come from the Pac-12 and you do that in year one. That's saying something. That's disruption. I think Penn State winning it would be disruption. Penn State, where are they, Jesse? Fourth odds, I think. And Penn State's there every year. Penn State, aside from those two hurdles, has done everything you can ask of them. Third best odds to win the conference. Penn State actually has better odds to win the Big Ten than Michigan does, yet I would call it disruption. If Penn State wins this thing, I would not call it that if Michigan won it, because that's how conditioned I've become to watching Ohio State or Michigan hoist that trophy. If Penn State gets it done, I would say that. Certainly if a Nebraska got it done or an Iowa got it done, if USC got it done, that would be an even bigger deal. Listen, people don't question Oregon's physicality. They just kind of want to see them do it. People outright question USC's physicality. I am people. I question their physicality. If they were to come in and shut everyone, including me, up and win the Big Ten in year one, yeah, that's disruption. But do we have that? That's my question. Do we have anyone out there with the fortitude to make it happen? And lastly, very open-ended question here. What does Florida State need from DJ Uiagalelei to be a national championship contender? We expect them to contend for the ACC. We expect them to be in the playoff hunt. I expect that from them. So if I get that, I got what I expected. To go above and beyond that, they're going to need a certain level of quarterback play. DJ, it's really weird. Not weird at all, actually. It's pretty eye-opening when you look at his 3 years as a full-time starter. The last 2 years, one of them was at Clemson, one of them was at Oregon State, are pretty consistent. Last 2 years, 62% and 57%. Last 2 years, 2,500-yard passer, 2,600-yard passer. Last 2 years, 22-7 TD to INT ratio, 21-7 TD to INT ratio. And it wasn't like an apples-to-apples comparison. At Clemson, you're dealing with a much different athletic profile and conference than you are at Oregon State, but very comparable numbers. If I did a blind resume, it wouldn't be that much of a stretch for you to guess, yeah, the same guy did that in back-to-back years. So I don't think that's good enough to be a national championship contender at Florida State, is what I'm saying. But it doesn't mean he has to be that. It could be that he has planted himself in the middle of the best situation he could possibly be in, and he's at a program there, and he's being led by a head coach and a coaching staff there that's going to squeeze a little bit more out of him than has been squeezed out of him anywhere else. And you know what? That's not something I would put past that Florida State staff at all. How much more do they need? Or is Florida State able to play such a complementary style this year that they could take the caliber of quarterback that he's been and legitimately be a national championship contender with that? I think they could contend for the ACC. I think they could contend for making a playoff spot. I don't think the level he's played at is good enough to win a championship. So there is an above and beyond factor that has to be there. This is not me doubting This is me openly speculating or questioning. Can they get that out of him? That's a big challenge for that staff this year, because it's not like, it's not like some places. It's not like Will Howard, for example, where Ryan Day in Ohio State, they go get him and they plug him in, but everything else around him's pretty much ready to go. At Florida State, there's a lot of churn on the roster, period. They don't return nearly as much production as an Ohio State does. So that doesn't mean anything other than there are more questions with that team. They're watching us in San Juan, Puerto Rico, because I can't roll my R's. It's just a good old-fashioned Puerto Rico here. Lexington, North Carolina, and Douglas, Georgia. Thank you so much. And make sure you guys, if you haven't already, check and see if you're subscribed on podcast or YouTube. We're getting just alarming amounts of reports, about 5, I would say, that people thought they were subscribed, and they're not. Don't let big tech win. Make sure you're subscribed. Well, this wasn't polarizing at all today. Hey, Jesse, did you just put this question in the live chat? Let me go vote. Okay, I voted, and I changed my vote because we are wont to do that. So you saw it if you're watching live, and if you're not watching live, don't worry. I'm about to let you know. Vol Fanatics Show from Cornersville, Tennessee hit me and said the SEC, hold up, Cornersville, is that like Giles County? I think that's down near where Diana is. There's a really big Church of Christ singing down in Diana 2 times a year. I have frequented it myself. I think that's where Cornersville is. Anyway, Colin, you don't have to include that. Okay, here we go. Vol Fanatics Show from Cornersville, Tennessee hit me and said, the SEC gets 5 of 12 playoff spots. Now, this was a bold prediction from them, but I thought to myself, that's so good we could make our own segment out of that. So here's my question to all of you. Get 12 teams in the playoff this year. How many of them are going to be SEC teams? This could get pretty crazy here, because I'm going to remind you once, and this won't be the last time, we're not just taking the top 12 teams in the country. It is a conditional 12. There are auto bids, and the auto bid process is going to get messy. And so just remember, just because you think a lot of SEC teams are going to be in the top 12 doesn't mean all of them are going. So my guess, right now, right here, it is June 13th, the year of our Lord 2024. I think 5 SEC teams are going to the playoff. What do you think? I'm looking at the poll right now, and most of you are landing between 3 and 4. I saw a lot of 5. I saw a lot of 5 sentiment earlier today, but some of you thought 5 was a little bit of a stretch. So the odds, obviously there's a ton of SEC teams in the top 12 on the preseason totals from FanDuel. But that's not always how it's going to work out this year or any given year. So I thought Ace Football Analytics had a really good reply. When I put this on Twitter earlier today, they do a really good, it could be a he, it could be a they. Whoever runs the Ace Football Analytics account does a really good job. They replied, I think, with a really good take. They said there's 2 likely scenarios here. One, the SEC gets 5 teams in, everyone else is outraged, and they are calling for expansion to begin immediately. I could see it. Or scenario 2, the SEC only gets 2 to 3 in, they're outraged, and they threaten to break away from the NCAA, poach a few teams, form their own league and their own playoff with the Big 10. And you know what he said at the end, which I agree with? Both are likely to happen. I completely agree with that. Both are likely to happen. That's why, as much as it pains me that we've expanded this thing, you don't see me moaning and complaining overtly about it, because I don't know how permanent it is. And I'm not just saying that out of randomness on this show. I'm not just saying that spouting off at the mouth. It may sound like I am. I'm not the only one who feels that way, and some people with semi-guided knowledge on the matter do not feel like we're just set for life with this 12-team format. Now, true enough, maybe it expands further. But there's also a world where it contracts. There's a world where it breaks off entirely and there are new products. And I'm not saying I like it or dislike it. I'm just saying we're not fixed right now. So, yeah, obviously, if the SEC only gets 2 to 3 teams in and it wasn't a disaster year for the conference, if they get 2 to 3 in but they really genuinely feel like they deserve more, they're not going to sit back and take that. Other conferences would have to take it. But if the Big Ten or the SEC genuinely feel like they've been done wrong in this thing, there will be action. And the other thing is, the SEC is sitting there still playing 8 conference games, and they're waiting. They're waiting. They're saying, we will play 9, As long as you guys do the right thing at the end of the day and take some of our 9-3s over their 10-2s or 11-1s, we'll be happy to voluntarily strengthen our schedule more. But if you don't, if you really pretend like you are what your record says you are, we are not voluntarily going to a 9-game conference schedule. So there's all that. But also, there is the other side. There is the side where the SEC gets 6 teams in. Half the field ends up being SEC teams. That's not crazy. It may make you mad, so it may be maddening, but it's not crazy. I mean, I get angry when I miss a traffic light all the time, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was the wrong thing to happen. I mean, it's timed up and it did what it was supposed to do. But I will tell you this. There is a scenario this year where the SEC ends up getting like 5 or 6 teams in, and a lot of you are outraged, and a lot of you start yelling what? SEC bias, right? And I just think that maybe you want to rethink that. I'm just looking down the road. What could happen is the SEC gets like 6 teams in the playoff, and you live in Omaha, Nebraska, and you say, SEC bias, that's the only explanation. And actually what could happen is the only thing that prevented more teams from the SEC from being in is the SEC. What do you mean, Josh? That sounds like it makes no sense. It makes sense. Because here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is at the end of the year, we're going to get there, and inevitably, a whole bunch of SEC teams are going to have really good resumes. And if I were to press a button and they all became blind resumes, and you just had to pick and you didn't know who they were, and you didn't know which conference they were in, some of you who claim SEC bias, if you were fair about it, would probably end up putting 7 or 8 of them in the playoff. But as it stands, we do know, and we do see that conference sticker or affiliation. And so if it comes down to 5 of them already being in, and then there's a coin flip between a 9-3 Alabama and an 11-1 Oklahoma State, someone on that committee, several someones are going to say, we can't put another SEC team in, can we? Well, actually, that's not the way it's supposed to work, but it's the way it probably will work. So the best weapon against that thing becoming overly saturated with SEC teams is actually that SEC sticker. Although I know that makes little sense to some, especially in the SEC bias crowd, be glad you can tell who the teams are, or else there may be more in there. There is a difference in competitive versus the level of play. And this is the great unknown to me. The Big 12 is going to be insanely competitive this year. Could be the most fun conference in college football to watch. By and large, the Big 12 is not going to be playing the same caliber football that a lot of the SEC will be playing. How much is that properly interpreted? First off, am I right about that? So if I'm wrong, I'm just wrong. But if I'm right about that, is it properly interpreted? If I watch Utah versus Kansas State go to triple overtime and it's just an instant classic, do I get fooled into thinking because all of these games out here are competitive and this team's 11-1, they are the same caliber as maybe a 10-2 LSU? Got to be careful with that. I'm not a committee member, but I'm saying these are the conversations we're going to be having. Because if you do fall into that trap of thinking that you are what your record says you are, all power conferences are equal, therefore an accomplishment in this conference at 10-2 is roughly equal to that of this conference being a 10-2, the SEC and the Big 10 aren't going to have that. So I don't know how many teams the SEC is going to get in this year. My guess is benefit of the doubt will go their way. I don't think that's the craziest notion in the world. Why would benefit of the doubt not go the way of the most powerful conference in college football? But be that as it may, if they don't get their way, if they get their way, you got to take it. If they don't get their way, they don't have to take it. Is that fair? It is not. Is it the way of the world? Yes, it is. We move on. We've got bold predictions. I've got several of them here. And I would say this is a bold to quite bold batch of bold predictions tonight. Let me look at our poll results over here. So you guys think 3-4, nearly 3/4 of our audience, if I'm looking at this poll right, Immunity, thinks that the SEC is more likely to get 3 or 4 teams in. Actually, wow. Well, those results are interesting. Let me just say, those results are, I think 5 are going. I think they're going to get 5 in there. We'll see. Very interesting. I'm glad I had Jesse produce that poll in there. I'm glad I thought of that and told him to do it. Okay, bold prediction time. Which things do you believe about this year that you would bet your own money on? Well, we got one in the SEC. Speak of the Devils here. What about Alabama? Are they going to make the playoff? What seed will they be? Well, Dog Pound up in Austin, Georgia says, forget about that. Bama just misses the college football playoff. Fortunately, our friends at FanDuel already have odds on this. Bama, if you bet them to make the playoff, plus 24. If you bet them to miss the playoff, minus 152. So, 9-3. Would that get them in? Their over-under win total is 9.5. It's juiced to the under. So basically, odds makers are telling you 9-3 is kind of how they feel Bama this year. Would 9-3 be good enough to get them in? Are they a hot team late? They play on the road at LSU, at Oklahoma, and Auburn in 3 of their last 4 games. If they go 3-0 there, they're hot at the end of the year, and it's a hot 9-3. Is that good enough to get in? Is 9-3 in the SEC by one of their premier teams alone good enough to get in? I think this is an 8. They've got not the easiest schedule in the world. They do play Georgia in the regular season. I think this is an 8 on the boldness scale, only because there's a lot of unknown. Even with a 12-team field, you predict them to not go to the playoff, not get one of those 12 spots. That in some other years would be a 10 on the boldness scale. I made it an 8, maybe an 8.25, but I'm bumping it down to an 8. Bama, not in the playoff. Interesting. Next up, this was a very interesting one as well. Damian from Ravenswood, West Virginia. A new college football playoff champion will be crowned this year, a first-time team in the playoff era. So only 6 teams have won the thing in the playoff era. Ohio State won the first one. Bama's won a few. Clemson's won a couple. LSU, Georgia's won a couple, and Michigan just won one. So those teams are out. So we got to have anyone other than them win the national championship this year. This is an 8.25 for me. Because on one hand, 3 of the top 5 odds teams at FanDuel would be repeat champs. That's one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is out of the top 10, number 3, Texas, they've never won it. Oregon's number 4, they've never won it. Number 6, Ole Miss. Number 8, Penn State. Number 9, Notre Dame. They've never won it. So I've got 5 of the top 10. They're in play. FSU at 11. They've never won it. Tennessee at 12. Missouri at 13. A&M 15. Miami 16. None of them have ever won it. Now, this is one of those classic, do I take a couple of teams or the field? It depends on how dominant you think Georgia could be or Ohio State could be. Do you think Bama's not going to fall off? Do you believe in LSU or something like that? How powerful do you believe those top teams are? The fact that Texas would qualify this prediction as a win and Oregon would qualify this prediction as a win, that's enough to bump the boldness down to just an 8.25. Next up, I don't know who knows something up in Ashtabula, Ohio, but Super Saiyan from Ashtabula wrote us and said Julian Saiyan will finish the season as Ohio State's starting quarterback. By the way, what kind of fever dream would this have been in January? That kid had early enrolled at Bama, and just a few months later, we've got folks predicting he's going to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State by the end of the year. And yeah, it all could happen. So Will Howard is the presumed starter. He's the transfer from Kansas State. He's got a ton more experience. Saiyan is literally a true freshman. Obviously, injury could happen, but we don't want to predict injury because that's gross. So let's just say, without the concept of injury being baked in here, let's just say the suggestion is Julian Saiyan flat out takes Will Howard's job by the end of the year. That is bold, but it's not impossible. The Oregon game is going to tell us a lot because Saiyan's good now. Julian Saiyan's plenty good enough to start for a lot of major teams out there. It just so happens Ohio State is blessed enough to have been able to go in the portal and get Will Howard. The Oregon game is going to tell us a lot. I am of the opinion that Ohio State should be able to brutalize people this year. Ohio State, I think, recruited the receiver position so effectively for so long. They had so many 5-star guys out wide. It kind of like it altered who they were. You got all those 5-star guys, man, you got to incorporate them. Well, the problem is Michigan looked and said, we'll just sledgehammer you. You know, we got some good talent out there, but we don't have to do that. Ohio State should be able to play the way Michigan's played for the last several years if they have it in them and if they want to. Will Howard's the kind of quarterback you would play that way with, but if they go to Oregon and they try that and fail, or they're not even trying to do that and they fail, then it could be a course correction. There could be a lot of internal questioning and searching. Or if they go out there and they're dominant and that style of play has taken hold and the defense is everything we thought it was, well, then you got no shot at this happening. Experience matters a whole lot. To insert a true freshman in over a healthy, veteran experienced quarterback, you got to have no doubt. You got to have virtually no doubt about that kid. And as good as I think Julian Sayin can be, it's hard for any true freshman to end up being that. But there are people not inside, I'm not saying inside the program at Ohio State, inside the fan base, there are people who believe this will happen. I think it's a 9 on the boldness scale. Not impossible, but it's a solid 9. Lastly, probably one of the most fun predictions we've had so far, and it comes to us from Uncle Rico's van in Bozeman, Montana, so you know it's legit. 2 teams whose mascot is the tiger will make the playoff. I got you covered here. Missouri, 13th best odds to win the whole thing. Clemson, 14th best odds. LSU, 7th best odds. Auburn, 23rd best odds. And Memphis has the best odds to win the AAC. Now remember, G5 is going to get themselves a team in. So the way I see it, Memphis has got the best odds. Let's say they win. Let's say they win that conference and they get the G5 bid. I need one of you guys to come through. Missouri's got a very decent shot. LSU, can you do it? Clemson, second odds team to win the ACC. Can you do it? Auburn is a stretch. I will grant you that. G5 plus just the aggregate of belief is the formula here. This is an 8.75 on the boldness scale. I respect it. I love the ingenuity. I love the creativity. It is bold, but it's not too bold. And so it had a place in the show tonight. You can get all those odds at FanDuel. Exclusive odds provider of the show. We got a meeting with those guys Monday, I want to say, and a lot of good ideas will be thrown around in that meeting. We appreciate them because they're always there, very, very quick to answer. I throw some hypotheticals at them. I had one of you come to me the other day, and you DM'd me, and I didn't respond, but trust me, I saw it. It was the thing about Florida. I sent it to FanDuel. I got the answer. We'll have it in the show eventually. Really creative, really interesting. You want to know about those odds. You want to play some wagers? If it's legal where you are, FanDuel, that's your place. I think it's the best sports book in the world. It's the one we chose to partner with, and we could have partnered with a few of them. I will leave it at that. But FanDuel is really good with us. They are really good to us. They will be good to you. I respect more than anything you can imagine how serious they are about responsible gaming, and they are on me constantly to remind you to do this stuff responsibly. And that means if you can't afford it, do not do it. And if you question whether you can afford it, also do not do it. Okay? This is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be entertaining. And if you're not interested in it, that's cool. I also think it's fun to just go check out the odds because it's free to go to the website. You can check it out right now if you want to. So FanDuel, always in our corner, and we appreciate them for that. Okay, lastly, I wanted to wrap up the show tonight. We've never done this for this team, but we thought that there was a time and a place where we were going to insert this in immunity, and I think this is it. So we do the mood tracker where we try and take the temperature of fan bases. What's the fan base feeling, especially in June, this time of year? We've never done Colorado before. How do you articulate the mood of Colorado fans right now? How do you define the Colorado fan base? Because you got a family whose mom and dad graduated and they live out in Aurora, Colorado. They've been there forever. They're season ticket holders. That is one kind of Colorado fan. There's the dude who's 28 years old and drives a UPS delivery route and lives in Boulder, and he loves Colorado just because he grew up in the community. He didn't go there, but still, legit Colorado fan. There's this other army of folks, fair enough, who are only there because of Deion Sanders. That's fine. That's fine. But that's why I would call the current mood of the Colorado fan base sort of like a carnival high. When I was growing up in Harris County, we would head down to Columbus for Riverfest. I don't even know if they still do it, but it was a great event because you had all these carnival rides that were hastily put together by ex-cons. In some cases, just guys on work release. Is it sustainable? No. Is it healthy? No. Is it safe? No. But is it fun? Yes. That's Colorado football right now. I don't know many people who believe that what Colorado is right now, they will be 7 years from now. I don't know many people who believe Deion Sanders will be there in 7 years or 5 years or maybe even 3 years. They don't care because it's fun right now. Now, as soon as I say that, I know the comment section is going to light on fire with people saying, but it's not working. Well, this isn't going to work. Well, what's the alternative? Or it's not going to work as opposed to what? Might I remind you they were 1-11 when he got there? And they won what? They won 4 last year. I think they got 5.5 as the over-under win total this year. What's not working? They didn't land him in Athens, Georgia, guys. It's Colorado. Colorado has rightfully been described as, pre-Deion Sanders, the worst athletic department in the Power 5 ranks. And here comes Deion Sanders, and it's brash, and it's way different. And imagine being a Colorado fan, not one of the Johnny-come-latelys. All due respect to JCLs. Imagine being someone who is a long-suffering Colorado Buffalo fan. You know this isn't going to last, but you want to enjoy the ride as long as you can. Now, I'm not sure there's anything wrong with that. I'm enjoying it. You know, I got personal feelings on maybe how sustainable or how realistic it is to build a long-term winner through the portal, and my feelings are I don't think it's possible. But it's fun to watch. I mean, if you ask me whether I've watched more Colorado football this last year than I have the previous 3 years combined, the answer is a definitive yes. So I'd say it is working. I would just say how we define working at Colorado and how we define working in Tallahassee, Florida, may be two different things. So I'd say the mood's a carnival high. And you know what? If you've never been to the carnival before, I feel bad for you. You got the management types who take their kids to wine testing before they're even 10 years old. And then you got the real ones who just take their kids to the carnival. And you know what? Maybe, just maybe, they leave with a bruise or a skinned up knee or a low-grade fever. They had fun. Food poisoning the next day is well worth it. Did they have fun? I'm having fun. I think the Colorado fan base is having fun. And if you're not having fun, that's your right. I would just ask you, why are you not having fun? I've had fun doing the show tonight. I appreciate you guys. We'll be back here same time Sunday night. Until then, make sure you're subscribed. And once you've done that, for producer Jesse, for director Colin, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great start to your weekend, and God bless.